And I wanted to be the first cancer survivor to climb Everest. And I wanted to do it literally and use it as the highest platform in the world to scream hope.
If somebody told me what this man has accomplished, I would honestly say that's impossible. It can't happen. And, through the research, I found out that the likeliness of what you're going to hear that happened would be that of winning the lottery 4 times with the same numbers. And our guest today, Sean Swarner, is just a miraculous story, one of hope, one of just perseverance, and one that should inspire each of you. So Sean, welcome to the show.
Hey, Chris, I appreciate it, man. It's funny you mentioned people wouldn't really believe my story. I had a friend whose son, a number of years ago, did a school project on me, and the teacher failed him because he said that guy doesn't exist.
You know what? And I bet, if I were to just kind of rattle off all your accomplishments and what you've been through, people would just be like, that's physically impossible. But you know what? In life, a lot of things are viewed as impossible that actually become reality. And you are exactly that. I mean, the first thing I loved was, yes, you had some really, really hard times when you were 13 years old. You had a rare disease, if I'm not mistaken, cancer, that they said there's no way you were going to make it through. You had 13 days to live?
Yeah. I was well, the second one was 14 days to live. The first one was 3 months. So earlier, we were talking about you having a child. Imagine the doctor comes up to you and says your firstborn is going to be dead in 3 months.
I can't imagine that.
That's what my parents heard. They tried to keep it a secret from me for a long time, because my step grandmother on my mom's side passed away. I'll say a few months before I was diagnosed. She passed away of cancer, and they didn't want me to associate cancer with dying. So as a 13-year-old, they just said, "Hey, Sean, you're sick. You have Hodgkin's disease." But anybody who's 13 to say 16 or 17, because those were the 2 cancers I had, that age bracket. Anyone who is in that age, they're nosy. They're going to want to know what Hodgkin's is. So this was before the internet, so I had to go to the library, the hospital library, and look up Hodgkin's disease, and I found out that it was cancer. So in retrospect, I think it was really good that my parents didn't initially tell me it was cancer. They told me, hey, you have a condition. We're going to take care of it. We're going to do everything we possibly can to get you through it, and everything's going to be fine. And I later on found out, oh, by the way, it's cancer. And looking back at how things have changed in the medical world, let's just say you get diagnosed, knock on wood, this never happens. You get diagnosed with cancer, and you sit down with your doctor. Treatment modalities have changed so much. In the industry has changed with how they actually handle the diagnosis, the disease itself. What hasn't changed is this, and how people are told they have cancer. So again, going back to just pretending, say, Chris, I'm sorry you have cancer. We're going to do everything we possibly can. As soon as you hear that diagnosis, you've checked out. I don't know why they haven't flipped it around and did what my parents did with me and tell everybody now, hey, you have a condition. This is what it is. We're going to do everything we can to take care of it. And oh, by the way, it's cancer. Because when you hear that C word, you check out, man.
Yeah,
you're
totally
done. But if you listen to everything before that, you realize that you have hope. That's what my parents instilled in me.
Well, that's important. And I think a lot of what happens in life isn't so much what you say, it's how you say it. And I mean, everything we ever hear about cancer, I mean, I've lost many of my family members to it, is it's not good. If you're not going to make it, or your chance of making it is terrible. But the way that you just framed that, saying that, there's hope. And hope is seriously one of the most powerful things there is out there. I've seen hope at work in so many different ways. And your story is one that, I think there was a lot of hope in there, but then just so much more to the story than hope, because hope gets you, the ability to go to the next day, but there is just this perseverance that you did. I mean, I love this one, goal that you have. I'm all about goals, being an ex-pro athlete, everything we did was set goals. And your goal was to crawl 8 feet from the hospital bed to the bathroom. Like, I want everybody listening to this to just imagine that that's your goal, right? Things, in your life are at a state where your biggest goal is to crawl 8 feet from the hospital bed to the bathroom. And like, that's that. But then Sean goes on from making that goal. He succeeds there. And then he goes on to what? Redefine impossible by climbing 29,035 feet to the top of Mount Everest. And you did that with one lung. And literally, that is where the story begins, not where it ends. Most people would be like, that would be just unbelievably impossible to take that on. But no. You went and climbed 7 of the highest peaks in 7 continents, been to North and South Pole. And after beating 2 terminal cancers with one lung, like, come on, how do you do this? And I didn't even get into all your stuff, man. We'd be here for most of this interview if I just named off all the things that you've done. But like, what inside of you drove you to just keep going like this?
Well, you know, it's funny you ask that, because I still ask myself that same question. I wouldn't say almost every day. I constantly ask myself why. You know, I remember when I first came up with the half crazy idea of being the first cancer survivor to climb Everest, and telling mom and dad, and I can still hear my dad's voice echoing in my head. He goes, "We didn't get you through 2 cancers to go kill yourself on a hunk of rock and ice. You know, like you survived cancer. Why would you push the limit?" And I honestly think it's because I am more afraid of not living than I am of dying. And I want people to understand what I know about life without having to go through what I went through. You know, because when you're given 14 days to live, when you have a man of the cloth standing at the end of your bed, reading you your last rites, when you have the hospital coming in, as in you're 16 years old, you have the hospital coming in asking you to write out a living will. You know, you start to see things a little bit differently than most people. You start to prioritize things a little bit differently. So, you know, freshman, sophomore, junior in high school, it's all about popularity. It's all about having the nicest clothes, the nicest hairstyles, the nicest everything, whatever it might be, being popular. I didn't care. I was fighting for my life. I knew health was number one, you know, family, my faith, you know, everything was different because of the perspective that I had. And in all honesty, the reason I climbed Everest, without getting too far into my story, because like you said, we don't have all day to talk about all that stuff. I did it to give people hope. You know, I was studying to be a psychologist for cancer patients, and this was after college, because in college I was Belushi from Animal House. Man, it was $100,000 party. I had a great time. I was the guy drinking too much, swinging from the rafters. But then I got my life in gear, and I was like, well, shit, you know, I need to get my act together. I took the GRE, went to grad school, but at that same time, I was removed because I was born and raised in Ohio. So I'm kind of drawing a map in my head right now. Moved from Ohio down to Florida, where it was the first time I was just away from the whole idea of cancer, because I was known as Cancer Boy. You know, growing up, I grew up in a small town called Willard, Ohio. I mean, my backyard was a cornfield or a bean field, depending on the season. And when I was finally away from all of that noise, it was the first time I stopped and actually stared myself in the mirror, and I had a panic attack, man. I asked myself, what do you want? What are you doing? You know, where's your future going? Because when you're going through 13, when you're going through your teen years, and it becomes your MO, where you become terrified every night to close your eyes because you don't know if they're going to open the next morning. You do that day in, day out, over and over and over again for years at a time. You learn to become comfortable in the uncomfortable. You know, you learn how to deal with uncertainty a little bit differently. So I learned how to relax my body. I learned how to lay there in bed, literally not knowing if I was going to wake up the next morning or not, and being okay with that. So as you know, as a 16-year-old, I came to grip with reality much earlier than most people. You know, my grandma's, she just turned 99 years old.
Oh my goodness, that is such a blessing.
Exactly. And the amount of knowledge and information that she has in her head, and the experiences that she's had in her life. You know, we had deep conversations when I was going through my treatments at 16 years old. So I think the reason I did all that, kind of answering your question like a politician, I suppose, roundabout way.
Oh, I love it.
More along the lines of giving people hope, because when I was in Jacksonville going for my master's and my doctorate, it was the first time I asked myself those proverbial questions in the mirror. Who are you? And it's not, I'm a son of Scott Swarner and Terry Swarner. That stuff doesn't define who I am. I do. And it was the first time that I wanted to define my future as well, because it was the first time I actually even thought about having a future. Because I had lived literally day by day until all of a sudden my doctor goes, hey, you're in remission. And I'm like, okay, that's fantastic. My parents were happy, doctors were happy, friends were happy. I'm just like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do now? But then I realized that I had been given a gift. And that gift was going through what I went through. Because whatever traumatic situation you're going through or condition you're in, you can always choose how you react to it. And that's what I did. I wanted to see it as a way to empower me to become stronger. And I wanted to show other people that cancer is not necessarily the end. It could potentially be the beginning. And I wanted to be the first cancer survivor to climb Everest. And I wanted to do it literally and use it as the highest platform in the world to scream hope.
There's something surreal, a message in what you just said that I got to bring out. And, I interview a lot of really amazing people on this show. And, you've been interviewed by some of the greatest. I mean, from Steve Harvey, I just love that guy. CBS, Fox and Friends, Today Show, Good Morning America, Early Show, Huffington Post, Outside the Lines, Sports Center, Washington Post. I could keep going. But, and sure, you've probably heard this, but your willingness and through everything you went through, the one thing that drove you to all this is your ability to tell others, to help others, to give others hope, not yourself, others. And, there's a universal, some people call it a spiritual universal law, but I just call it a law, just like gravity. If you go to the highest building and you jump, man, you can't beat gravity. It just takes over. You don't bend it, you don't beat it. You're a pancake. Well, this law is much like that, and that law is giving. So you did so much of this to give others hope unconditionally. I mean, yes, you beat it. So you had to tell that story by accomplishing the impossible. Literally, I mean, whether you look at it, I mean, you made it the not impossible, but literally you did the impossible to give other people, not anything for you, hope. Every person that I bring on this show, we always talk about that law of giving and how powerful that is. And, I'd like just for a second, it's not really something I planned to talk about, but just for a second, can you just talk about what that means to you to give and how that has come back to you? Because, so many people start with, okay, if I give, I get. They start with the get. Once you do that, you break the law. You try to modify the law and you can't. It's about just unconditionally giving. And I know for a fact that giving you did, that hope that you gave so many people has come back to you. And I just want to talk a little bit about that.
It's interesting you brought that up because by giving back and doing what numerous guests on your show have done, one of my favorite quotes is by Nelson Mandela, and it always seems impossible until it's done. And I've always wanted to embody that. And I think I have. And by giving back to people, you're absolutely right. You get it 100-fold in return. And when I got done with Everest, well, actually on Everest, so I the entire time I was climbing, I actually had a flag that was about this big, like 3 feet by 2.5 feet. It had names of people touched by cancer. And it was on a silk flag to save weight because, my toothbrush, I cut in half because I want to save as much weight. Ounces make pounds. And going up that high where, at an elevation where jumbo jets level off and fly, there's not much oxygen. And for a guy who has one lung, it becomes a little difficult. So I had that flag folded up in my chest pocket as a constant reminder of why I was on the mountain. And it was to give back. And then I went on to do the 7 summits, highest mountain on every continent. And I did put a flag that had names of people touched by cancer. There's one mountain that I've gone back every year, and every year I use it as a fundraiser for a cancer charity called the Cancer Climber Association, and it's the highest mountain in Africa. It's probably on the bucket list of 1 million people. It's Kilimanjaro, Mount Kilimanjaro. Mm-hmm. And I've been up and down that mountain now 21 times. And
Okay.
every year I go, we do it as a fundraiser, like I said, for Cancer Climber. And we pay for a survivor's trip every year. Anyone can go. Like, I would love to take you. Life-changing trip. So we pay for a survivor's trip. Then it's the responsibility of that survivor to raise funds for next year's survivor, kind of paying it forward. Right. So I think it's a beautiful business model as a fundraiser. And going up and down 21 times, taking a flag that has names of people touched by cancer, the average success rate on the mountain is 48%. But my groups that I take up there, we're at 99% success rate.
Wow.
And I honestly think it's because of what you mentioned, giving back. Because when you give back, you help people tap into their a deeper purpose, which helps with passion, which helps with meaning. You know, passion, purpose, and meaning. Those all interact with one another. And it's amazing seeing the transition of people from the moment they see the mountain. I call it, everyone's going to have, pardon my French, their oh shit moment. Like, everyone's going to have that. And it's when they look at the mountain and they ask me if the glaciers on top of the mountain are clouds. They're like, are those clouds? Like, that's the mountain. So that's their moment. Seeing how they go from that moment to the base of the mountain, up through the trail. We take 6 days up, 1 day down, because we go up one way, down another, and seeing how in an instant their lives change at the summit. You know, I've had people who were, there was one guy who was a active duty Marine, you know, a big tough dude. And he was up there in tears. An hour from the summit, I start crying. I know we're going to make it. I get so emotional on it. And funny story, he tried to cover it up, you know, being a tough guy. He starts crying, comes over to me, hugs me, and he's just in tears. He goes, it's such a long way down. Then we had another guy who did 2 stints in Afghanistan. He's now a police officer in Pittsburgh. And he said that the 6 days on that mountain, in those 6 days, he learned more about himself than he did for the past 30 some odd years of his life.
I can understand that.
And I think you get to a stage in your life, I don't want to say an age, but you get to a point in your life where it's very similar to Christmas. And if people don't celebrate Christmas, you'll still understand this concept. You get more out of giving gifts than you do receiving gifts. You know, you get more out of seeing the happiness on your wife's face, your child's face. That's my reward. I love just seeing people happy. So on the top of Kilimanjaro, it sounds awful, but I love seeing people, I love seeing people cry. You know, but it's those good tears. And I think when you give something back like that, it's intangible, but it's something people can't live without. And it changes their life in an instant, because they'll come up to me on the summit of the mountain and hug me in tears and say, thank you for getting me here. My response is always the same. I say, I didn't get you here. They realize that they did it themselves. Like, there are millions of keynote inspirational speakers around the world. There are very few empowering speakers. Because I think when you give something to someone, you empower them. And if you can empower them to understand what their personal core values are and utilize those to help them make decisions on their own to empower them for a better future, you change their life. And it's like that ripple effect. You drop a pebble in a pond, right? It goes out. You never know whose life you're going to change. The
other thing too that you mentioned there, and I never, you know, in my early years, and probably many of us when we're younger, you know, we're in our prime years and it's just go, go, go. I was, you know, a pro snowboarder. And I remember the day my career ended. It was in Mammoth in California. I was out there for a photo shoot, and I was the first guy to hit this jump in the morning. And being an East Coast guy, I'm used to winters being cold, dreary, and gray. And in California, your mornings are sun, birds, and more sun. So I'm just like, I got this. I'm just on the top of the world. And I get to the jump and I'm like, I'll go. And I just drop in, not thinking that the snow was a little bit faster because it's morning. And I just pointed at this jump. And as soon as I went off, I do my trick, start spinning. And I very quickly realized how big of an error I had made by not checking my speed. And I watched the landing go by, which means for anyone that doesn't snowboard or ski, like when you hit a jump and you overshoot the entire landing, these jumps typically are about 20, maybe 30 feet high. The landings are usually 30 to 40 feet long. So now you're in this trajectory where your landing just disappeared. So I don't know how high I was, But all of a sudden in your mind, you start thinking, holy crap, I'm going to hit flat and things are going to break. That's it. You just know that that's going to happen. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. I hit, things broke, things tore, and that was it. The end of a very long career at age 34. Now, at that point, in my mind, kind of, much like you, I'm like, I'm going to make it back. Rehab, every therapy you can do, I did. And I hit the gym harder than I ever had. And I came back what I thought was strong, but I could not win. I could not do what I used to do. Something had not just broken physically, something had broken here and maybe even here. And I never made it back to being a pro, and I lost my sponsors. And I went into this transition point where I just felt like I didn't have purpose anymore. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was doing. But then all of a sudden, through a weird chain of events, I got offered a coaching job, which at first I turned down just like that. I said, no, I'm a rider. I'm not a coach, like almost insulted, arrogance, if you will. And then all of a sudden I thought about it, and, my fiance thought, helped me through it. And I took the job. And then I remember, fast forward to the first nationals with that team out in Colorado, Copper. And I remember the joy and the tears that I shed, when my athletes got on that podium. I wasn't on the podium. I knew exactly what it felt like to be up there. This feeling was so much greater than anything I ever felt, winning contests, getting paid to be a pro, being on that podium when it was me up there, remembering that. None of what I experienced from that winning was even close to what I experienced watching somebody else succeed. There's something very powerful in how you said that when people actually go there, you find that joy, and that's what makes you do it. And it all just circles back to that is exactly what we all should be focused on, is helping other people feel that, be that, and do more, helping them succeed instead of always trying to think about us succeeding like I did in my younger years.
When you were offered the job, you instantly said no. It was because I'm guessing, you kind of mentioned it, because of your ego.
Yes, absolutely.
Your ego was hurt. When you removed the ego, is that when you became happy for other people?
No, I think I still had ego even when I said yes. And I justified it, and I'm going to get really transparent. I justified it because this was the only way I knew now how to get paid to actually be on my one plank snowboard. This is kind of threw that out there. I know you're a two planker, so I had to throw the one plank in there, but it was the only way I could justify getting a paycheck to ride again. But what I didn't know is that thing that I was just about to embark on would be the thing that saved me, the thing that really kind of gave me more than I ever had as a pro rider. So I wish I could say that was the switch, but it wasn't. It was probably, I don't know, a couple months into the season when I actually realized the joy that I had for actually sharing what I had learned, my wisdom, if you will, with all of them, and then watching them go on to win, which was just single-handedly one of the greatest memories and feats that I ever had in snowboarding, period.
So slowly over time, that ego went away and you became happier.
Much more happier. I didn't have anything to prove. I don't even know if it's about proving, but back when I was riding, it was always proving something. When I was a financial advisor, it was always proving something, which then leads to the ego. And, even today in the career that I have today, ego, I've shed it. And when you get rid of that, I don't even know what it is. I can't even describe to anyone what an ego is. I just know what it feels like. And then I know what it feels like when you get rid of it. And yes, you are much happier.
Absolutely. And it seems like so many people are trying to talk about proving something. It's like so many people are trying to prove something to other people when from the moment you're born, we're conditioned as human beings to please others. You look at a baby, you go up to the baby, right? And that's exactly the response that the baby gives, right? So you do that, you have a response, and then all of a sudden you start pleasing your parents, you start pleasing your teachers. Where is it where in your life where you stop and you realize that it's not about pleasing others? You have to take care of yourself, as opposed to trying to impress others or do something for others. Take care of yourself first, and not in an egotistical or narcissistic sense. But it boggles my mind that so many people are more concerned about what others think of them than what they think of themselves.
I got to tell a story, and I've got so much more I want to ask you, but listen, there's just so many good things about what you said. there's this one book I read, and I got this little story out of that book, and it's so true. It was about a father and a son, and the father worked a lot, never really saw his son. And one day the little boy comes up to the dad and says, "Dad, we never really play together. Can we have an entire day where we just play?" And the father, feeling remorse, said, "Absolutely, son. Saturday, let's spend the entire day together playing outside." And the kid was so excited, went to bed early. And the father had a ritual every morning, got up and he read the paper. And that was just what he did, drank his coffee, read the paper. We all have like a habit of what we do. And he gets up extra early this morning thinking, I'm just going to get up really early and get this out of the way. And he gets into this article, and then all of a sudden on his leg, he feels a tug, and it's his son. And he looks down, and immediately is like, oh my God, I'm not done with this story. And his son's like, Dad, I'm ready. You want to go out and play? Father really quickly thinks about it. He's like, I need to finish this article. And he says, all right, yes, but before we go out, son, I want to play a game. And he remembered seeing a picture of the world in the newspaper. So he tears that page out and he tears the world up into a whole bunch of little pieces. And he said, son, take a seat here. Let's put this puzzle together. And when we're done with this puzzle, we're going to go outside and we're going to play. To the father was just trying to buy time to finish the article. And to the son, he was like, oh, that's cool. All right, put it together. Father goes back reading, and not a couple minutes later, the son says, Dad, I finished. The father thinks it's impossible. There's no way. Closes the paper, and sure enough, it's all put together. And he looks at his son and he says, son, how did you do that? And the son says, Dad, at first I didn't think it was even possible. I was struggling. I almost quit. And then a piece of the puzzle fell down on the floor. So when I got down on the floor, I looked up through the glass table, and under I saw what looked to be a picture of a man. So what I started doing is just reaching up, and I started just assembling the picture of the man. And when I came back up and looked at the top of what the puzzle should have been, it was the world. The moral of that story is, if we put the man together, the world takes shape. I will never forget that story. And that rings true to what you just said. Sometimes we have to put the man together. And I don't mean to say man or woman. I mean, it doesn't matter. But when we put the man together, everything else takes shape. And you, out of everybody I've ever interviewed, you have put the man together.
Wow, that's a great story.
And I think that's what's so inspiring about your story. But your story and everything you've done, I mean, Everest. There's a lot of people, and let's just get back to ego. There's a lot of men, women, people that climb Everest to prove something. They got an ego. They go in there in the best shape of their life. Maybe they're an all-star athlete and they want to try, climb Everest. But unfortunately, Everest or any of these mountains you're talking about, they're dangerous. There's inherent dangers, and people never come off of Everest ever again. They're still up there today because they never made it. And those are probably some of the strongest, most fit human beings ever. And they didn't make it because they did it for the wrong reasons. But in all of the things that you've done, if I had to ask you, what's the most dangerous thing that you've ever encountered in your travels?
Well, I just recently got married.
That was certainly the most dangerous thing you could have ever done. Oh my gosh, should have maybe just climbed Everest again.
Stop there. It's the most dangerous thing was probably going through the two cancers, because I know when I'm in the mountains and on Everest, on any of these adventures, I'm taking calculated risks. I've lost a lot of friends in the mountains. I remember a guy named Peter who fell 2,000 or 3,000 feet down a sheet of ice on Everest, then plummeted into a crevasse. And I remember looking back up at the mountain and seeing actually where he landed, because the snow was blood red. It was just, and then the streak down. The most dangerous, it just hit me, thing that's ever happened on an expedition. I fell through a crevasse on Denali, which is the highest mountain in North America. But when I felt in the most danger ever was when I was climbing the highest mountain in Europe, which is right between the Black and Caspian Seas, right on the border of Russia and Georgia. And we were just kind of going out for a hike on the trail, and we stumbled into a Russian border patrol camp.
Oh boy.
And people were shouting in Russian. Gatling guns were pointed back at us. People with whatever AK-47s were pointed at my head. People are shouting over in Russian over here, shouting in Russian over there. I see that turret turn around, and I looked up, and we were underneath their canopy, like that camouflage canopy. I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, I got to change my pants first of all, because I have no idea what's going on. These people are yelling, and I see bullet casings all over the ground. And luckily we were with one of the local guides, and he started telling them, hey, we're just trying to go through camp to go see a waterfall that's maybe another half mile up that way. And everybody calmed down, but in that one instant, I saw my life flash before my eyes, and I had no idea what was going on, because I didn't understand any Russian at all, except, thank you and hello, something like that. And that had to be hands down probably the scariest I've ever been. Next to, like I said, Denali, I fell through a crevasse. I just poked through maybe to my mid waist. Like I could tell my legs were just dangling, pulled myself out. But on the crux of the climb on Denali, so we were probably at about 16,000 feet. So still we had to go from, we'll call it 14 camp. There was another camp called 15 camp. We were going to be going up this sheet of ice, and it's an 800-meter sheet of ice. And I remember I was testing out a new set of crampons for a sponsor, and crampons are those basically metal spikes that you attach to the bottom of your boots so you can have purchase on the snow and ice. And as I was going up, I was almost to the length of the rope. So I had a climbing partner I was roped up to, and I was out front. So we had 50 feet of rope between the two of us, and my front points didn't catch. So my right foot slipped, my left foot slipped, and I started rocketing down the glacier. And it's amazing how your perspective is different from him and I. For me, things that I'm sure, being a pro athlete, you can see your brain's like this. So for me, I was rocketing down the mountain, and I remember literally thinking to myself, well, this isn't good. I should probably do something to stop. So I rolled over and with my ice axe, came to a self-arrest where you take the point of the ice axe and dig it in. But I was also, like I said, roped up to my climbing partner. So I slid down 50 feet from there to him, and then 50 feet below him. So I literally fell 100 feet. And I remember just feeling very calm, very serene, and snow shooting up between my eyes and my glacier glasses. And I finally came to a stop, climbed back up to where I fell, and belayed my partner in. So I pulled the rope into so he could come up safely. And when he got to where I initially fell, my adrenaline was gone. I started shaking. I was freaking out. And I looked at him and said, dude, we need to get back to camp. So we made our way back to camp and went back to the tent. And as I was sitting there, I looked up and I was like, give me a sign. Let me know if I should be here or not. And I leaned back into my tent, and somehow my hood caught my glacier glasses that were hanging inside the tent, snapped them in half. Like I looked, I was like, I kind of need those, but that was a sign that I was looking for. I went home. I came back the next year. We got more snow in two nights than the Alaska Range did their entire winter. So it was insane. And then we kind of dug out our camp spot, and we made trails to the next camp spot. If you could take an aerial picture of it, it'd be like a cross section of an ant farm. So it was beautiful, but the avalanche danger was off the charts. We flew home. And then literally a week later, someone was looking for another member of their team because one of their members was in a biking accident. They were from Vail, and they randomly found me. And then I flew back up to Anchorage a week after that second trip, went up, no problems. So I would say a couple things. It was, the whole dangling from a crevasse thing, losing a friend on Denali, sliding down Denali, and getting married. I'm kidding about last name.
You're not. You're kidding yourself that you think you're kidding about that. That's a very dangerous thing.
She's great. She's great. I met her in Puerto Rico at one of my keynote talks, and I remember standing up in front of the whole crowd, and it was the first and only time I've had to consciously tell myself, dude, you got to scan the room. People are going to notice you're staring at her. Scan the room. So that was in 2011. She moved. We've been married now. February will be 3 years.
Oh, that's awesome. It's just like signs everywhere, signs, whether it's the broken, glasses, or like you just couldn't look at anyone else at that speech. And I know, I speak all over the country, and I know what it's like to scan the room. I've never just focused in on one person and not been able to look at it here. That would be bizarre, because you definitely in your mind, you'd be thinking, oh my God, everybody knows I'm just staring at this girl.
Yes. You're like consciously, dude, scan the room. There are more people here. Stop staring. Someone's going to notice.
Oh, that's a cool story, man. I like that. So, every one of us, in our journeys in life and the different things we go through, we come across dark moments. And during those dark moments, we all have self-talks, things that we talk to ourselves about, things that we say to ourselves. Some of us, it's religious things. Other people, it's motivational things. What do you do in your dark moments?
I'm going to turn that around and ask you a question too. When you were competing, did you ever tell yourself, don't fall, don't do this, don't do that?
Of course.
Okay. And how did it end up?
Always fell, always got hurt, every time. I swear to God, almost every single time that I thought that's exactly what happened.
So I learned this when I was 13 years old, when I was battling my first cancer. I was 60 pounds overweight, bald from head to toe, on the shower floor, on my hands and knees, weeping. Because my hair came out, all my hair came out in that say 20 minutes when I was in the shower. And the water was filling up in the shower. I had to just pull the hair out of the drain so the water could go down. And it was in that moment, it basically utter helplessness. Because I remember earlier, before I got in the shower, I looked in the mirror. I couldn't even recognize who I was. 60 pounds overweight, losing my hair. My eyes were sunken in. There was no hope left, no fight left, no nothing. And I had been a competitive swimmer for years. I think I still have records from like 1988. So I thought I was going to go to the Olympics, but there was nothing left of that person. So on my hands and knees, 60 pounds overweight, I decided that I had two options. I could either fight for my life or give up and die. And this is what goes through someone's mind who's 13. I mean, come on. But then I also realized that I didn't want to focus on not dying. I wanted to focus on living. So the reason I asked you, have you ever thought to yourself, don't do this, don't do that? And it's always happened. When I was 13, I decided I wanted to focus on living, not dying. So I wanted to focus on what I wanted, not the avoidance of what I didn't want. And I still do that now. So in those dark moments, I don't tell myself, hey, don't give up, don't quit. I picture myself on the top successful with that emotional attachment to what it means to me. And I focus on what I want, not the avoidance of what I don't.
So you've traveled all over the world. I mean, you've been to some of the most beautiful places. I can't even imagine the views from the tops of some of these mountains. And maybe I'll take you up on one of these days and you can show me what the view is instead of me just imagining it. But all of that has profound effects on people when they see beauty at that level. And you've gone to so many different of these beautiful places. Like, how has that affected or changed your life? It's a broad question.
Yeah, and I think it kind of combines everything that I went through with the cancer into the journeys and the adventures. I don't sweat the small stuff. Do I get pissed off when I'm driving down the road and somebody cuts me off? Absolutely, just like everybody else. That's annoying, but I get over it very quickly. I don't hold a grudge. I let things go. I know in the grander scheme of things, the bigger picture, it's not worth my energy. And I realize that going through life, you should be guided by your set of personal core values. And that's one of the things I help people with on Kilimanjaro. I help them tap into that, because once you start utilizing those to make mindful and conscious decisions, you're never going to have any regrets. So I think combining the journeys and the adventures, or the journeys, the adventures, and the cancer together, they really help support one another. So what I learned going through the cancers, I have utilized on the adventures. Doing it for a deeper purpose, finding beauty in the most dire situations, and finding a sense of humor too.
Yeah, that's important.
But going back to Kilimanjaro, when you go, you'll see the sunrise coming up over Kenya. It's the most beautiful purple, yellow, orange, pink, the most amazing sunrise that you've ever seen in your entire life. and it hits you on an emotional level. And maybe that's different than most people, is when they do vivid visualization. I utilize that all the time. When I was going through my cancers, I actually pictured myself in my body destroying the cancers. And then going up Everest, I did the same thing where I pictured myself on top and all these mountains. Everything I do, I picture myself before it happens. And then I work backwards. And if something happens, like I'll come up with an obstacle that may come in the way, I'll deal with it in my mind before it actually happens. I don't focus on it because it's not what I want to. I don't want to avoid that, because if it happens, it happens. I've already dealt with it. So on Everest, I would smell the ozone. I would feel the sun on my face. I would hear the styrofoam crunching of the snow under my feet. But the misconnection that most people have is, even if you look at, like, people want to buy a new car, a new house. For some people, they want to get a new wife. It's not that stuff. They want to double their income. It's not the stuff. It's not the top of the mountain. It's not the peak of whatever you're going to climb in your life. It's what that represents to you. So maybe you want to double your income because it's not the money. It just means security. Maybe it means that you can spend more time with your family. You look at those personal core values. So for me, making it to the top of those mountains is going back to giving back. Helping others, helping them believe that there's more in their own lives. So it's the why behind the why, I think, what I'm trying to say. And it's that emotional attachment to the end result that's always going to get you to put one step in front of the other.
Yeah, and I think that's, and I haven't read it, and I have to. It's definitely on my list, but you authored several books. Keep Climbing was one of them. How I Beat Cancer and Reached the Top of the World. I mean, I can only imagine that book is talking about this visualization of these different things. I mean, can we just talk a little bit about the two books you've got? Is there two, or how many books have you written so far?
Well, one was a big one through Simon & Schuster. That's an older one. That's the one you're talking about, Keep Climbing.
Yep, Keep Climbing. But you've got a new book too.
Yeah, the second one just came out. It's we just changed the title, so bear with me for a second.
Is it Becoming Unstoppable?
Yes, Everest Becoming Unstoppable. And It's going to be a part of a 7-series set. So I've already written Kilimanjaro, Into the Self, and I'm working on Everest, which is the third of the 7 summits I've climbed. But the second one, Conquering Your Everest, or being unstoppable, Conquering Your Everest, that helps people with that vivid visualization. And I'll send you a copy. So send me your address when we get off. But it's written in a fashion I've never seen before. It's like 95% adventure, fun, adrenaline-packed, emotional stories, but embedded and woven throughout those stories are lessons. And then at the end of it, like the last 5% is like the dummies version of how to, right? Hey, this was a story. This is how you can use it in your life. This is a story. This is how you can use it in your life. So it really incorporates everything, and it makes it more relatable, because most people aren't going to climb Everest. However, everyone has an Everest to climb.
Oh man, it's so funny you just said that. It is exactly where I was going, because the next thing I was going to say is what you already just said. I was going to say there's a lot of people that will never be able to climb Everest. I may be one of them that will never climb Everest, but I want to know. I want to visualize what that potentially could be like. And you can't get that visualization without having a pathway and somebody that has done it that can tell the story of doing it. That is wild that is exactly what I was envisioning before you even said it, because that's what I was thinking. I want to visualize this, because my whole life, growing up with not much and having these big goals has been one giant visualization. Everything I wanted, I would visualize. I would first think of it, then I would dream about it, then I would draw it over and over on trapper keepers and pads. And it became so real, like pro snowboarding, like I don't ever talk about this, but like that was something that probably maybe should have never happened for me. But because I never stopped dreaming about it, and the dreams are so vivid. I mean, I would, and I still do this today. It's kind of funny. I'd sleep, and we all dream, but how many of you ever had a lucid dream, or a dream that seems so real that you wake up and you're like, I think I just did that. That was what snowboarding was for me before snowboarding was for me. That's what surfing was to me before I ever even paddled a wave. I mean, it is so unbelievably powerful. I have no clue what the meaning of all that is, but it doesn't matter because it just gets you prepared for where you're going in your life and the things you want to accomplish. And, you know, the only thing I love about your entire story and just in life is there is only one way to fail. There's only one way that somebody can't obtain or get what they want, and that is quit. It's the only true way that you won't get what you want is if you quit. Because otherwise, I mean, yes, you'll fail. You'll always fail through life. There'll all be lessons. But the second you fail and then decide that you're going to quit is the second that it actually becomes reality, and that's game over. You just have never quit. I mean, what is next for you? I mean, where do you go from, you know, all the 7 highest peaks to Hawaii Ironman finisher, books, motivational speaking, all these things? I mean, where do you go? Like, what is your next thing? I mean, I'm thinking, I'm like, what could be next? I mean, skiing? I mean, are you gonna, I don't know. I don't even know what to say.
You know, in all honesty, it's wanting to give back more and utilize, because like I said, I've been up Kilimanjaro now 21 times, and I have double the success rate of the groups I take up. I was adopted into the local tribe called the Chugga tribe over there. I've used the same guys, same guides, same porters, same cooks, same everything for every trip. And like they even gave me a Swahili name. They call me Mzungu Kicha, which I was gonna say between you and me, but this is being recorded. But Mzungu Kicha in Swahili means crazy white man. So they gave me, my Swahili name is Mzungu Kicha. But I'm using the mountain as an immersive coaching experience for people who want something else. You know, it's very odd you brought that up, where you said that you were an athlete, pro athlete, and then this is who you wanted to become. There's that transition period where no one helps you.
No one.
You have to figure that out on your own. I'm utilizing that mountain to help people tap into their personal core values to assist in that transition. Because when you do transition in life, you might not necessarily have a different set of personal core values, because it's always going to be family, personal growth, success, things like that. But they need to be funneled into a different area. And there's nothing wrong with that. People just need a little assistance. So one of the best ways to do that is to take them to Kilimanjaro, where, like I said, double the success rate, help them up and down the mountain, but give them little things along the way to focus on, because it is honestly an entirely life-changing trip. And when people come off the mountain, they're a different person, a better person. They come off, they're a completely different person, and they have a new passion and new meaning in their life. So I want to start taking people on more and more of those trips. On the flip side of things, if I can get this, maybe we can talk about this too, if you're interested in joining me in January of 2023, I want to run 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days. Logistics are taken care of. We have the locations. Start off in Antarctica, go to Johannesburg, then fly to Perth, then go to Dubai, then Madrid, then Santiago, and finish in Miami. In 2022, do some training and kind of go around the country, visiting hospitals, running here, running there, and not having it be about me, but have it be about people who are in the hospital. Have them share their stories. You know, and then maybe when I finish in Miami, have 1,000 survivors finish with me.
Now, do you know the Iron Cowboy, James?
Yes, I don't know him personally.
Well, I should introduce you to him. He was on the show, and you two absolutely have to talk, because it's so in line. Like what you just said and what he's done is so in line. I think you guys could really have a wild conversation about that trip in 2023. I don't know what would come of it, but you never know until that introduction's made. So I will make sure that I introduce you to, and you guys probably can talk about the 2 crazy feats you've done, because you guys are both madmen. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, whether it's Kilimanjaro or I don't know about marathons with my knees, but I guess, hey, it's just because I'm thinking that that's my debilitation, but I can't say anything to you. You got 1 lung. So I got 2 knees that work. They're just broken, and you got 1 lung. So what the heck? I would say
I'll carry you. You breathe for us.
Yeah, there we go. Hey, I'm all good with that. I definitely breathe okay. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't, to be honest with you, outside of like business and things, I haven't challenged myself physically to any level outside of just regular being in the gym. So I probably need something to challenge myself. you know, and I'm going to read that book, and I bet you any money the next call is going to be, all right, what's next? Where are we going? Because I think I need to challenge myself and get to that higher level again. This has been just awesome, and I really appreciate your time. I mean, how the book that you have, it's already out, right? Becoming Unstoppable. So can people buy that book?
Yeah, the best, just go to Amazon or go to my website, SeanSwarner.com.
All right, we'll put the links up in so that everybody listening to this can grab the books. And, you know, and the other thing too, everybody that's listening, I would urge you one thing, like go to his website. He's got great videos. It's right here. It's wild. The front page is awesome. Black and white is my favorite. Now, is that your dog or somebody else's dog?
That was Maya. She was my dog. I had her for about 14, 15 years. Beautiful dog.
Well, Sean, it's been a real honor and a real privilege to have you on the show. I appreciate it. I appreciate what you do to give back and to help other people, because we never ever know who's hanging on with 8 fingers or 1. And, you know, maybe just one person that hears this interview is hanging on by that 1 finger. It just makes them grab up and reach on with 2 or 3 more, because that's called hope. Hope is the single most powerful thing that we all have. You just got to tap into it. And Sean did that, and Sean is helping you. So if you like this video, I urge you, check out my other videos by subscribing to this YouTube channel. Hey, also, hit that little alerts button right up there. It's somewhere up there.
I mean, if I could sum up all the advice I ever got from billionaires, it was basically, yeah, whatever most people tell you, do the opposite. That's the general advice I got from the richest people on earth.